the video tutorial for the Sassy Sunflower Hashtag Half Pack Quilt. If you don't know what a half pack is, a half pack looks just like this. It is 5 half-yard cuts of fabric already coordinated for you, and it does include a pattern with each half pack that you purchase. If you don't already have a half pack, you can get them at any one of our half pack dealers. They're all listed on our website, sassysunflowerquilts.com. And if one is not close to you, there are listings of where you can get a half pack online as well. Just make sure when you purchase your half pack that you ask for the hashtag pattern to go along with it, because you will need that for the exact sizes of what we're cutting. We will not be giving those because it is copywritten. Okay, so the size of this quilt when finished is a lovely 51 by 61, which we like to call a generous lap size. And that there is enough fabric in this kit to make the entire quilt top, including the border. There is not fabric for backing and binding, and if you wanted to purchase that as well, you would need 3 1/4 yards for backing and a 1/2 yard for binding. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so other things you need besides your half pack with the hashtag pattern, you'll need some type of a rotary cutting mat. You'll need a ruler. I like to use a 24-inch for this particular quilt, and mine is 7 or 8 inches wide. Just because we're cutting long lengths on some of these, and it makes it easier to have a long ruler instead of moving a smaller one. If all you have is a smaller one, you can absolutely make that work. You just need to be real careful when you move that so that your lines are cut straight. You'll also need a rotary cutter. I like to use a 45 millimeter if I'm cutting like 2 to 4 layers. And if I'm cutting 4 to 6 or 4 and above, I like to use a 60 millimeter. So that's why I have both of these out. For this pattern, you will also need some type of a marking tool. You can use some type of friction erasable. You can use a dressmaker's chalk, that type of thing. And I like to use these sticky notes to identify my fabrics. It just makes it so much easier when you're putting the layout together. And I usually use a Sharpie because it's easier to read, but you can absolutely use scraps of paper, maybe a piece of masking tape, anything like that, but just so that you have some way to mark which fabric is which. Okay, so gather up your things and then we'll get started with opening this half pack and getting it ready to cut. Okay. So I did go ahead and get backing 3 1/4 yards and binding for this particular half pack, because this is a unique set of Moda fabric that I thought I'm going to have a hard time matching that if I don't pick that up at the same time. So if you did that, you can just go ahead and set your backing and binding fabric aside, and we're going to go ahead and open this up. And we're going to start with identifying our fabrics, just like the pattern says. Now we're to identify our fabrics by A, B, C, D, and E, and I made tags already for those. And if you flip your hashtag pattern over, you can see on the layout where each of those is going to land. So what I want you to do first of all is have a look at the hashtag pattern. The actual hashtag that goes up and down and sideways needs to be a fabric that's going to stand out. So whichever fabric you have that's either darker or a different color or whatever you want your hashtag to be, identify that one first. So for me, let me get this open. For me, I'm going to go ahead and make that this orange because I think that's really going to stand out, and I want that hashtag to stand out. So that's going to be my D fabric. As far as my other large panel pieces, which go along horizontally, I'm going to just go ahead and name those. Let's see, those are A. Open these up a little bit more so we can see them. Okay. The orange is going to be my D, which is my hashtag. This will be my A. And then I'm going to do this large floral as my B. And for my other, I'm going to do this little bit smaller of and a little bit darker, but smaller of a floral. And then for my E fabric is your fabric that is going to be your border. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. I'm going to use this cute polka dot for my border. I'm going to go ahead and set that number E1 aside. And actually, let me tell you, what I do is a little trick so that I don't forget when I start taking all these apart. I put all these labels on it and I take a quick picture with my cell phone. That way, if I forgot how I had these set up and which was supposed to be what, I can clearly see and be reminded of which letter went to which fabric. Okay, so we can go ahead and set number E aside. That's going to be our border. And we can also set aside to start with fabric D. We'll cut those in a minute, but what we're going to start with is A, B, and C. So let's take these. And for A, B, and C, when you look at the layout of how we're cutting these fabrics, they will be cut open, single layer, okay, each one. And you can see on here that these half packs look so cute with how they're folded and you can see all the fabrics, but they leave some creases when you open them. And then you have that center crease as well. What I recommend you do before we make any cuts is open A, B, and C fabrics, take them over to your iron board and press out all of the creases, anything that's looked puckery, and get them all pressed out, and then we'll bring them back and lay them out and show you how we're gonna cut them. All right, so we've got all the creases pressed out of our fabrics, and there are a couple of choices of how to do this next step. Fabrics A, B, and C are all cut exactly the same. So you can either cut them individually in one layer, or you can go ahead and stack the three of them. That's what I'm going to do. I've got A, B, and C all stacked right on top of each other and all even. And I'm going to cut exactly like it says in the cutting instructions on the hashtag pattern. You are going to be cutting two sets of squares. So you're going to have 4 squares from each of your fabrics, and then you're going to cut 2 long rectangles of each of your fabrics. Okay, so I like to use a little bit bigger of a rotary cutter, but really for 3 layers, you could use a 45 millimeter as well. So refer to your pattern, make those cuts. You'll have 4 squares and 2 long rectangles from each of your fabrics. And go ahead and do that, and then we'll talk about how we're going to cut our hashtag fabric and also the border. Okay, so we've got all of our rectangles and our squares cut. You should have them sorted so like fabrics are together. And from each of the fabrics, you should have 2 of the large rectangles, and then you should have 4 of the squares from each fabric. And what I do is I go ahead and put the same fabrics together in a pile, put my, however you decided to mark them, put the letter on them, and we'll set them aside so we know what we're doing. We've got letter B, also 4 and 2, and then we have letter C with 2 large rectangles and 4 of the squares. Okay, we have all of those marked. Now go ahead and grab your other 2 fabrics that we're going to be using as fabrics fabrics D and E. Okay, D being your hashtag fabric and E being your border fabric. The first thing you're going to do is just go ahead and take them to your ironing board and press out any creases. You do not have to open these up. These 2 fabrics can be cut with the fold, no problem. It makes it easier to do it that way, in fact. So just go ahead and do a light press, get all the creases that may be in the fabrics out, and then bring them back over, and I will show you exactly how we're going to cut these. All right, so we're going to start with your fabric that you're going to be using for your hashtag, and that will be your D fabric. We are not cutting the D and E fabrics exactly the same, and so it's easier if we just do them separately and I can explain each part. Okay, so you're going to cut it into 6 strips. Refer to the pattern. It'll tell you exactly how wide to make those. You're going to take 3 of those strips and you're going to set them aside for now. The other 3 strips you're going to lay out, and you're going to refer to the pattern, you're going to be cutting these in long strips. So just 3 of them, double folded, all right? And refer to the pattern as far as how long you're going to subcut them. That will give you 6 total long strips of this fabric, okay? So go ahead and do that, set them aside, and then take your other 3 strips from that same fabric. What I like to do is just go ahead and stack them all up. Oop, lay that flat. And cut just the salvages off. And take it to my sewing machine. And what I'm going to be doing here is I am going to sew those short ends end to end, and then sew this end to end. Okay? So what that's going to give you, it's going to give you a really long piece. I believe it's like 126 inches long strip. And go ahead and press those seams out, and we will bring it back over and I'll tell you how to subcut that. All right, so you've got your short strips cut that we subcut from the previous instructions, and you've got that really long piece that we just sewed together. Go ahead and refer to your pattern. You need to cut this long strip into 2 strips, and it gives you the size in the pattern. They are going to be the width of your hashtag. So those are going to be the horizontal part of your hashtag. The shorter ones are going to be the vertical part of your hashtag. So get those cut and subcut according to the instructions and set those aside, and grab your fabric E, which is going to be your border fabric. All right, and for this fabric, referring to the pattern, it's going to tell you exactly how to cut it. You're going to cut it into 6 strips, and you can go ahead and do the same thing that we did with the larger pieces. You can go ahead and cut off the salvage and sew those all 6 of those strips together, end to end. So you'll have a super long strip of fabric with your border for your border fabric. Just go ahead and do that now. And then you can set it aside, and we'll get using that when we get ready to put on the border. Now, I know I've taken a while to tell you exactly how to cut all these pieces out. That's because this is the hardest part of this quilt. This is the most tedious, is making sure that you get all the pieces cut exactly like they're supposed to be. The rest of it is going to be easy. All we have to do is put it together. So cut your border, set it aside. Then we're going to grab our squares from each of the 3 fabrics. I've left the letters on so that I remember what I'm doing and which is what. All right, A, B, and C. And also, I like to use fabric clips. I didn't tell you that at the beginning, so if you need to go ahead and pause the video to grab some fabric clips or some pins, it just makes it a little bit easier as we're putting these together to take them to the sewing machine. You want to make sure that you've got the right things staying together. So then we are going to look at the block sets section on our pattern. Okay, and it says in the block set section, oh, it's tongue twister. Take an A block and a B block, and we're going to sew those together. So I am going to clip along the side that my seam needs to be on. So when I get to that sewing machine, I'm sewing the right way. All right, and then you're going to take a second one of the A block, put it with a B block in the same manner, and get that ready to go to the sewing machine. Okay, now the next thing it says on there is take an A block and a C block and we're going to go ahead and put those together. Okay. And we're going to do that a second time, just like we did for the previous. So you take the last A block and a C block and put those right sides together. Okay. And then the remaining 2 B blocks and C blocks just need to be, clipped together and sewn. And we're going to, this will just make it so easy to know exactly which side to sew on and exactly what needs to go with what when we get over the sewing machine. Okay, so when we go to the sewing machine with these, we are going to want to make sure that we either have a 1/4 inch foot or some type of a way to make sure that our seams are going to be a 1/4 inch. All right, so for the longer strips and the border strips, really didn't matter. The 1/4 inch seam is kind of, you can vary that a little bit. From here on out, it is very important that all the seams that you sew are at a 1/4 inch. So go ahead and take your little stack of blocks, take them over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew them all along that clipped side on each one of these at a 1/4 inch seam, and then open them up, take them to your ironing board and press those seams to one side. And then we'll get started on our large panel blocks. All right, so we've got all of our squares sewn together into block sets, and they should look like this. And we should have 2 of each of the sets. We're going to set those aside. And we're going to grab our long panels. All right, now the instructions for these say that you're going to take one of your A panels, grab one, and one of your B panels. All right, and you're going to sew those together, right sides together. And this time we're going to sew them on the long edge, okay, all the way across here. So we'll go ahead and clip that side so we make sure that we've got that together. So that's the first one. Set it aside to go to the machine. The second one, you're going to take a C rectangle, which is this one, and you're going to take that second A rectangle, and you're going to clip that along that long side because that's going to be our stitching side. We want to make sure we're on the right side. All right, there's that one. And then of course, for the last one, we're going to use the last 2 long panels that we have. And those are going to be clipped together. So that, sorry, those will be clipped together on this side. All right. And we'll get those all clipped. And then we're going to do the exact same thing that we did with those block sets. We're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along that long side. We're going to press them and press those seams to one side. We'll bring it all back over to the table and we'll talk about how we're going to lay this quilt out. All right, so you've got your long panels sewn together. You've got your block sets sewn together. And you've got your hashtag pieces all cut and ready to go. That's pretty much it for the elements of putting this quilt together. Let's hide them under there. So what you're going to need to do now is either clear a space on a floor space, a large table, maybe a bed space, because what we're going to do is, referring to page 2 of the hashtag pattern, we're going to lay out all of these elements exactly how they're going to be sewn together. All right, so as I said, these are going to be, the 2 long pieces are going to be your hashtag pieces that go horizontally, and the shorter ones will be the pieces that go vertically. So I'm going to get mine laid out, get yours laid out, and then I'll show you what mine looks like and some variations that you can do. All right, I've got all of my strip sets and my block sets and all of my hashtag strips laid out. This is what it looks like. Okay, and as you can see, I did it exactly like the pattern lays out, where I've got the same fabric going all the way across horizontally. Now, if you want to make it more scrappy, that is up to you. Here's what you can do. You can just go ahead and flip-flop those end blocks, and that gives it a little more scrappy of a look. It is up to you. You can flip the middle blocks as well. You can do all sorts of things to adjust what this looks like. This is your project. So the way that you want to see it put together and the way you like it is absolutely fine. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'll be putting it together exactly like the pattern says. And our next step is this. We are taking the block sets. We're sewing a strip, the short strip to that. We're taking the strip set, the long strip set, sewing that to the other side. Then we're going to go ahead and sew that strip in between there. So what we're going to have is we're going to have a whole set all sewn together from side to side. All right, so we're going to do that here with this set. Then we're going to do it with the middle set. So we'll sew all of those together. And then we'll do it with the top set. All right, and then we'll come back, go ahead and press all those seams, and we'll come back and I'll talk to you about exactly how I like to get this strip placed so that all of my vertical lines, my vertical hashtag lines, are even and lined up all the way from top to bottom. All right, so you should have all of your strips sewn together, your vertical strips. Okay, so they look like this. And you're going to take, this is the top set. You're going to take one of those long strips that are going to go across. All right, and you're going to put it at the bottom of that set. And you will be clipping that all the way across. And we want to make sure that it fits, that those strips fit together perfectly. They should be the same size, and we clip them together so that as you're sewing, if there's a little bit of pull or tension, it doesn't pull one of either the top or the bottom a little bit more. And then when you get down here to this end, you either have not enough or way too much. And the reason we don't want that to happen is because we want it to be even across, and if one is shorter or longer than the other, it'll cause your quilt to kind of look kind of wobbly. So go ahead and clip that all the way across. You're going to sew that at a 1/4 inch seam, press it, and then bring it back, and I'm going to show you my little trick for making sure that your next set goes on exactly even. All right, so you've got that strip sewn onto your first set. We're going to take the second set and we're going to sew it to the other side of that strip. Now, as you can see, you want to make sure that this strip and this strip are even. You don't want it to be kind of over to the side, or it's going to make your hashtag look really strange. So the way I make sure that that happens as I'm pinning or clipping this together is I take a writing implement, and I'm going to use this friction pen because, hey, it'll erase just fine with an iron. And I line up a ruler, okay, right even, and I just make a mark. Right there. And I make another mark, sorry, make another mark over on this side. Okay. Make that one a little bit darker so I can make sure that I can see it. And just in case you can't see that, let me take the camera a little closer so you can see what I did. Okay, I marked here on this side even, and then I marked over here so you can see that. All right, then I'm going to do the same thing on the second set over on the other end. So it'll be, I'll mark this twice here, and then I'll bring it over here to this other set and I'll mark that as well. Okay, once I've got both of those marked, I'm going to lay this next set directly on top, right sides together. Okay, and when I start clipping, I'm going to take my clips and I'm going to line up that seam right on this line that I drew. Okay, because that's going to line up my hashtag just perfectly. Okay, so I line it up right there, put a clip, and then put a clip on this side in the same way. See, so that seam is going to be right where that little mark is. Okay, and that'll make my vertical hashtag lines perfectly straight, which is what we want to happen. And then you can go ahead and clip the remainder. Once you get both of those areas clipped at the hashtag on both sides, just go ahead and clip the rest of your strips together, the rest of the length of that together. And then we'll take that to the iron board and we'll sew that together. Okay, and then once this is sewn together, we'll do the same thing with the next set. Okay, so the next set, we'll go ahead and take that long strip, we'll sew it to this set, and then we'll mark it and we'll sew that last set of panels on the bottom. All right, so let's take that to the sewing machine, get the center part of this quilt sewn together, and we'll talk about the borders next. All right, we've got the center of the quilt done. Now all we need to do is the borders. So grab those border strips if you haven't already sewn them together. I think I told you to do it earlier and then I didn't do it. So I need to sew mine together, the short end together, and then make one great big old long border strip. Okay, and once you do that at 1/4 of an inch, and then go ahead and press your seams to one side, and we are going to apply that border to the sides of your quilt on the right and then on the left, and then press those seams out, trim if you need to, and go ahead and apply the border to the top and the bottom of your hashtag quilt. And that's all there is to putting this fun quilt together. I'll show you what mine turned out like, and I'll also show you some really fun things you can do to embellish this quilt and make it unique. Thanks for joining me today.